How's it going, everybody? It's Frisbee Moonsong here, also known as Robert, and I will be introducing you to the world of Sanctum. Now, in a video previously in this YouTube channel, or maybe it's a podcast, wherever you're listening from, we have spoken a little bit about the characters. Now, there will be more characters making an appearance here and there. There will be a couple of player characters that will be coming in the future, and there will be a couple of NPCs that you have not heard about yet. But this is the exciting part. We are going to be doing the catch-up of everything. Catch-up? Did I say catch-up? Catch-up of everything that you have not seen so far. Everything up until the first actual recording of a session that you hear, because we finally decided to start showing or playing the recordings after so long, because we haven't decided to record them for what reason, I don't know. We should have done it at the beginning, right? Right. Anyway, so bear yourselves, pause here, maybe get yourself a couple of drinks, some popcorn, whatever you need, because this is going to be quite a video. It's going to be a lot of talking, a lot of explaining of what happened, just to keep you updated with everything that is going on, with what is happening to the characters and how they have all evolved in this world of Sanctum. I'm really excited to bring this to you. I look forward to you guys listening to all the sessions and everything that we have. And we do encourage fan art, fanfics, everything like that. So please don't be scared to send us some stuff. We will put some details on eventually of you guys being able to send us a couple of things. Even in the future, we are looking forward to having a couple of maybe Q&As with some of the characters. We can even do a live Q&A with me if you guys want to, asking questions about the series, about the campaign, about the characters, about anything you guys would like to know. So let us officially get started. We start off in the small town of Silver's Keep. We will have a map posted for you guys at the beginning of this video, so you can see exactly what the world looks like. We're still getting a couple of names of the areas of the map, but it will all be sorted out by the time this gets to you. So we start in the little town of Silver's Keep that is built around a crypt that was there for many centuries. The town is located in the southern side of the world, mostly to the center. It is a new place that is created for a trade route between the city of Goldskeep and other cities in the area, and it is a beautiful little town that has beautiful countryside, and it's right near the forest. So it is also almost like a guard tower kind of town, because the forest is pretty dangerous. We start off with Darius, who travels through to the town, taking prisoners from Goldskeep all the way to here. The prison thing gets ambushed, and Darius ends up in Silver's Keep, and he stays there, having found a way to escape from his royal life. He obviously is a little bit of a slut, so he kind of gets around the brothels and everything and enjoys himself while he's in the town of Silver's Keep. Then we have Tamir, who being brought down, sorry, flies everywhere, being brought down through the prison thing that Darius was actually taking down from Goldskeep. He ends up escaping through the prison, and the prison cart actually came down with the cart of goods as well, so everything went haywire, and Tamir managed to escape with a couple of other people that were in the prison cart. Tamir managed to escape and ends up in the town of Silver's Keep, and he ends up staying in a shed somewhere in the town without being discovered, of course. And he gets a couple of jobs in the town, finding out how to make his way. He ends up getting in with the merchant and helping him deliver goods, but then he is stabbed in the back and framed by a group of bandits. After some time, Tamir ends up going back to his shed, dreaded about what has just happened, and he's walking through the town and decides he's going to head off to the tavern to try and find something. And on the way there, he comes upon Morpheus, who is a bard known as Morpheus Fade. And he is a very famous adventurer in this campaign, who you will be seeing a lot of. and his ability is to be able to sing visions of the future. Now that is very exciting and very prominent for what might happen coming in the campaign. So Morpheus ends up helping Tamir find a postage or a pamphlet explaining how they need to capture goblins in order to get gold. So there's a reward going out for people who want to get these goblins that are antagonizing the town killed. I mean, obviously, it's a D&D session. The first thing you throw at them is always goblins. So he ends up going to the tavern to try find some people there, as advised by Mr. Morpheus Fade himself. Kurok ends up in the town after traveling through the countryside, and he gets a calling from the temple. As he enters the temple, he prays to a goddess of which he does not know. Her name comes to him as Cassim, who is the goddess of knowledge, and she shows him a mark of destiny, which looks like an infinity sign but looped 3 times. And he realizes that in order to appease his ancestors, he has to find strength within other people. And it is the moment where he tries to find other people with this mark as quested to him by Cassim. So he ends up heading towards the tavern to end up for a night's drink, just to kind of clear his head after just arriving in the town. In the tavern, coming from the whorehouse at the top of the upstairs, walks down Darius, the ever so royal blue dragon samurai coming back from his nighttime of fun, and he comes down for a drink. He ends up sitting in the bar first. Walking in after him is Kurok, who sees his mark on his hand, also of destiny, and sitting at the table, somehow he managed to sneak in without notice, but Tamir is drinking, and because of bad constitution rolls, he ends up getting drunk first. And after some time of them all drinking, they find out from the tavern owner that they have overrun their bill, and they are in a lot of debt, and this is a real big problem. Now Darius can't go back home to his family, because obviously his family, he just ran away. He can't just go home and be like, "Mommy and Daddy, please give me money." No, it's now a point where he has to try fend for himself, and both him and Tamir have racked up this debt. And because Kurok is seen sitting with them, because he was curious about this mark of destiny as well, his money ends up going as well. So they all have to now work together to find out how to make this money. But luckily for them, the drunk Tamir ends up bringing over a pamphlet that shows, "We will fight the goblins." And they end up deciding together that yes, this seems like a good idea. I think they should adventure together, fight the goblins, get the money, they'll be able to pay off their debts and maybe even get a little bit more. On their way out of the tavern, they get ambushed by bandits. Bandits which in the forest were being watched by Danielle, the drow sorceress. She notices that there is a little bit of some devious acts going on, and she ends up following these bandits who seem to want to kill someone. Obviously she doesn't enter the town a lot, but something called her to that side. As she arrives, she notices that there are bandits standing all around the outside of this tavern, and as Darius, Kurok and Tamir walk out, the bandits ambush them, and Danielle comes and helps them in the fighting off these bandits. And they all notice that after the fight, they notice that they all share the same mark of destiny. Danielle knows for a fact that this mark of destiny was explained to her by her dear friend Khadgar, very close friend of hers, who taught her a little bit about the magic she knows, and taught her a little bit about power, and she still writes to him every now and then, but the rest of the party do not know this. So after finding out about the mark of destiny, they all end up deciding, well, what should we do? I mean, we've got this Mark of Destiny, where do we go now? And like, well, we can't leave the town because then the guards will be after us because now they have this gold debt to pay off. I mean, they could, but then you didn't want guards chasing after them. So they made the decision to eventually go and find the goblins. Obviously, they're not going to go fight them in the middle of the night after just fighting these people, and Morpheus Fade appears once again and gives them advice that there is a adventurers guild nearby that would gladly take them in for a night because they have free accommodation there. But since this is a new town, there is it's basically like what would be a non-profit organization that kind of helps adventurers travel to and from, expecting no payment in return. But if any quests do happen, they do get percentages of whatever gold you make. So only for the time being that you're staying there. So what happens is the party eventually decides, okay, we'll bow bow to Morpheus and see if what he says is true, because he seems kind of dodgy, of course, because there's some random guy coming to them. They have no idea who he is, they just know he's a bard. They've heard word of Morpheus Fade, but he seems, I don't know, you don't trust some random person you met in the street. So after some time they're like, you know what do we have to lose? The party ends off heading towards the Adventurers Guild, where they meet a very old man who introduces them to everyone in the whole place and introduces them to the spare beds that they have. And they end up staying there for the night, and they end up talking to each other, getting to know a little bit more about their characters. And in the morning, they all wake up one by one to a breakfast that is being served free of charge, I might add. Yes, it's a very fancy adventurers guild. Must be making a lot of money somehow. But anyway, they arrive, they wake up in the morning and get their breakfast free of charge. Darius begins flirting with Danielle, which obviously is in his nature. After being sort of rejected by her, he ends up trying to flirt with a red-headed waitress who zips past. However, he accidentally insults her by complaining about not having a good enough meal, which is typical of royalty, Which, just by the way, in this campaign, I just want to say, so far, I'm really impressed with all the characters and how they are playing their roles so far. They are doing a really good job, and it is really exciting to see them play the emotion through it. So I mean, we are not Critical Role or anything, but we do the best we can, and I'm really impressed thus far. So anyway, he tries to flirt with this waitress, and it obviously does not work out. And after some time of them eating a wonderful breakfast, they begin heading off to the goblins. Well, so they think. They start heading off to the outskirts of town, and as they head to the outskirts of town, they hear word that there is something going on with the crypt that is just on the edge of town. Which could be a bit of a problem, because there's Templars standing all around outside, the crypt entrance is closed, they are not letting anyone through the gates. But with a little bit of persuasion coming in from Darius, which never worked, and Tamir being able to talk his way into it, as far as I remember, they managed to finally, after a lot of debating, decide to go and check out the crypt instead of going for the goblins. So they begin to head into the crypt. They notice at the entrance of the crypt, at the top there is stone writing that talks in Elven, saying how it is the tomb of a great necromancer whose name starts with a K and the rest of the rubble is broken off. Of course, because you don't want to give anything away too soon. So there are scuffs of flame at the entrance to the tomb. They manage to open the crypt, and as the door opens, they go down a large staircase. There's a doorway to the right, a doorway to the left, and in the center is a dead Templar, completely torn apart. Now, after a little bit of rummaging and scouring through the area, they find a mote of power. It is a giant red symbol on the floor that after some time dissipates. They bring in the other Templars to investigate what is happening, and they decide to explore further into the crypt. They decide to head through the leftmost door. So they head in, first of all they go straight and they head into the door ahead of them, and then there are two doors to the right and left, and they decide to head into the leftmost one. As soon as they open it, they see doors on the ends of the hallway that they're in, and coming from both sides are zombies. They get ambushed by a whole bunch of zombies and skeletons coming in from the side that at first looked like they were incapacitated and in chains and didn't look like they were going to come to life, but I mean, it's a D&D campaign, of course they're going to come to life. So they end up fighting these this whole horde of things, and the door to the right, and after they've entered, the door to the left opens, and they see a woman wounded and slightly unconscious, coming in and out of consciousness. They find out that her name is Avesta. After being able to heal her up with a potion, her name is Avesta, and she is the guardian of this crypt that is kept by that is the crypt of a great necromancer called Kalia Shadow. Now you'll hear a lot more about his story as the campaign goes on. So they manage to rescue her, and they decide to go deeper into the leftmost door. Tamir, however, decides to sneakily head back and go into the right door that they missed previously. He manages to open it, avoid a couple of traps, quite skillfully I might add, was very surprising, and revealed to him is a necromancy book, which he is unable to open and cannot read for shit. So he ends up taking the book, putting it in his backpack, and heading all the way back to where the other party is. After catching up with them, they did not know he had disappeared at all. The party, going down deeper into the caverns with Avesta, meets up into a room with a big, almost something that looks kind of like a bird bath, I guess. I don't know what you will call it, but it has a point, a very sharp point at one of the edges. And they are encouraged to prick their finger, and which allows their blood to flow into the pool, which will allow the doors behind it to be open. As each of them prick their finger, they get visions of a battle between the undead and the demons. And it tells the story of a great necromancer who raised the dead in order to fight off a demon horde that was threatening the city and the world. And they manage to make through, and Avesta explains to them the story of it, and Tamir decides not to go through because he fears blood. Even though beforehand, if I forgot to mention, he started beating a dead corpse because he was so angry at the bandits, because the bandits that they fought earlier on were the same thieves that kind of backstabbed him, so it was kind of like a nice sweet revenge for him. He has a weird sort of phobia of blood that differs in and out depending on the situation. Anyway, the rest of the party, except Tamir, head all the way down down towards the depths of the cavern where as they're going they see a small light that dissipates, like a red light that dissipates from the room to the left as they're going down the staircase, and they enter the room, and it is a very small compact room with nothing but a what would you call it, a tomb? I don't know if it's a tomb, it's like a coffin in the center of the room. And as they go over, they manage to finally pry the coffin open, and there is nothing inside. And Avesta tells them that there's not meant to be anything because Kalia faked his death. So now this is a big revelation of now the necromancer is still alive, maybe somewhere, we don't know, but they don't know why he faked his death. It could be that he was chased by demons or something, we have no idea. But now, as this happens, they get ambushed by a hellhound. Now, which you know, hellhounds are only from the depths of hell. From some of the 9 hells, they are summoned from there. And there's only one hellhound, so it's not too much for them to deal with. After Avesta nearly gets her shoulder entirely ripped off, and some of the characters nearly die, but they don't. Well, they don't nearly die, they just get really low HP. They end up slaying the hellhound, and they realize that Avesta does not have long to live. She has been infected with some sort of illness that after a month's time she will turn into an undead, and she will become very dangerous. They can perform the ritual on her, which might cure her, or she might die if not done correctly. After some time of them trying to tend to Avesta's wounds in the crypt, the walls seem to begin to move. And they realize that this room is 10 times bigger than it actually seemed. And appearing in front of them is a large serpent, a snake, with black scales and a couple of luminous blue stripes on the back, black scales and luminous blue eyes. And in fear the party jumps back, but Avesta assures them that this was the pet of the great necromancer. Obviously it's grown huge after so many years, but this is the pet snake named Fluffy. I know, cute, right? So Fluffy ends up disappearing into the backs of the cave, slithering away, almost thanking them for defending the tomb. And they begin to head back up. They meet Tamir, and after some time they all decide, well, we have had to deal with this crypt for the whole day, let us not go for the goblins yet. They end up going back to the Adventurers Guild after meeting a dodgy priest who seemed very suspicious about whatever's going on, and noticing that the mote of power that was there had disappeared. But they had no knowledge of what it was. Then they also felt a second mote of power disappear. Or appear, but it was, I think it was reappear. I'm getting some of my facts mixed up. It was a long time ago, because you remember we've been doing this campaign for a year, so I'm basically telling you a year's worth of everything that has happened. So after some time they end up heading off to back to the Adventurers Guild, where they end up going back to sleep, and they end up talking a little bit about everything that's happened. Tamir still has his necromancy book that he still can't open. Danielle writes a letter to Khadgar, and as they wake up the next morning, Darius attempts to apologize to the fair red-haired maiden, who we later find out is named Sasha. After some time of talking to the owner of the place, Strandar, he gives them a couple of bread and cheese sandwiches that they can take with them on their journey to face the goblins. They begin to head off into the forest that morning to face the goblins. On their way into the forest, they get ambushed by a bunch of spiders. They manage to take down a couple of spiders, they take out a couple of their webs, and Tamir almost gets taken by the spiders, but he just survives, and they continue on their journey. They eventually come across a goblin encampment that is a huge tent, maybe 3 of them, and it's filled with a couple of goblins, and they manage to infiltrate a plan that the goblins had to storm the city. This delayed the goblin plan by a long time. These in chests of drawers of the goblin captain, after they defeated him, there were a whole bunch of notes of how to infiltrate Silver's Keep and take over all the people that were there and manage to take over everything. And they were lucky enough to get a stop to this, considering which way they took, because the survival roll check actually worked. After some time, they ended up continuing ahead. Tamir wanted to end up killing one of the goblins, and someone prevented them from killing a goblin. And then in Tamir's frustration, he headed off. They kept the goblin alive and allowed the last goblin to escape, assuring him that if he caused any trouble, that he wouldn't be able to survive any longer, because they would find him. And they made him vow to keep all his secrets. They made him vow never to touch or hurt anyone again. And after some time, Tamir heads off into the forest alone, ahead towards the goblin cave, followed by the rest of the party a little bit behind. As the party is going, they realize that through some time they start to pick up pieces of cloth that seem to be garments from a Templar who has made way through the area. And then they see claws scratched among trees, and finally find out that Tamir has been captured as well as whatever this other group was, because they end up appearing at a point where they see a little bit of a fight took place, and there's a lot of garments that seem to be attached to Templar clothes that they can remember from the town. They obviously left Avesta to be looked after in the town. The priest managed to take her and look after her. They brought her to a home. One of the Templars brought her to a home, and they continued to head towards the Goblin Cave. At nighttime, they arrive at a beautiful, calming pool, and they end up making camp there. And throughout the night it is very quiet, but Darius encounters a water spirit named Nimue. And after a rather scary encounter of what seemed like him going underwater, he begins to form a really good bond of being able to share what he's been through in his lifetime with Nimue, telling him a little bit about how he ran away from home and everything, and Nimue offers her help in the fight against whatever they are going against. And they hear word, oh, speaking of which, the goblin that they're allowed to escape, they heard word from this goblin that whatever these goblins are doing, they are sacrificing things to the flame, to some sort of flame that they are ruling, something that is giving them power, some sort of fire. And obviously this instills a little bit of panic within the group, because they want to keep Tamir safe and Tamir alive, so they end up hurrying towards this place. After the night at the pool, Darius gets told that he will receive help from the water spirit Nimue, also the Lady of the Lake, and they end up continuing onward to the Goblin Cave. At the outside of the Goblin Cave, they notice that the cave is pretty much empty, and Danielle, on her watch in the evening, manages to capture a scout, who she interrogates and ties to a tree, and basically asks everything about what is going on. And the Goblin Scout, manages to tell her that there is nothing much happening inside the cave, because most of the goblins have headed out. So them stopping that little encampment of goblins that were planning on storming the Silver Keep city for more sacrifices for the flame, it kind of put quite the wrench in the goblins' span of works. So they, after the next morning, after capturing this goblin and tying him to the tree and leaving him there and everything, they head off into the cave. Damn insects, fuck! They head off into the cave, and they managed to notice a couple of barrels had spilt over, and the place is looking quite a mess. They don't see much, but they managed to find Tamir in a cage that is left to the side of the that is in the one side of the cave. So after some time they begin to head deeper into the cave, and they get encountered by a dark mantle. Dark Mantle obviously tries to suffocate one of them, and they manage to eventually take it out. And a couple of more minutes of traveling, and they enter the bottom of the cave, which is a big room that so they end up on the top of like a cliff that goes down a slope on the two sides that they can walk down, and they're looking down over a shrine, and behind the shrine is a pool of lava. As they get down to the bottom, or as they get to that area, they notice 4 goblin shaman, and in the middle standing a goblin captain, which they have to try and fight again. On the side, they meet Dovlamin, who was the Templar that was captured and the newest member to the party, who helps them in this fight against the shamans and the goblin captain. After some time of finally defeating them, the goblin captain ends up erupting, and his body turns into a fire elemental, which now they have to try and take over. Just when they thought the boss fight was over, another thing comes. After some time of defeating the fire elemental, a red gem is left on the floor. Danielle goes and she grabs it, and she is transported momentarily in her spirit to the elemental plane of fire, where she meets a fire spirit known as Rahib, who gives her a little bit of information as to there is a elemental war coming up of some sort, and someone is trying to manipulate them, and this work was not his work. The goblins thought that the sacrifices were meant for him, but it was not. They were being manipulated by something else. Now, Rahib gives Danielle a task to take the gem that holds some of Rahib's power and his connection to this world to the city of Gold's Keep, where she'll be able to deal with it there. So they end up taking the gem, and Danielle puts it in her backpack, and they figure out what the hell was going on with all these goblins. So that was the main problem, was they obviously being manipulated by something else, and they end up going back to the town with the Devlamen. As they head back to the town, they get some rest in the Adventurers Guild again, and sorry about that cut, guys. Apparently the camera doesn't have enough memory as we thought it did, so we are going to continue the story. So you might have a couple of cuts throughout the scenes, and someone is just arriving home, and now my dogs are going to be barking like mad, so excuse the sound that you're going to hear. But, as I was saying, there they go. Yeah, let's just carry on. So as I was saying, the party ends up arriving back to the Adventurers Guild with their newly found member, Devlamen. So Devlamen, who is the Templar, now finally enters the party, and they arrive at the Adventurers Guild after this long trip to the Goblin's Cave and all of this of what happened in the tomb, and they now go towards Devlamen heads off with Danielle towards where they left Vesta with the Templar. Damn, that dog barks loud. Anyway, anyway, as I was saying before we got interrupted, Devlamen and Danielle, the Drow and the human Templar, end up going to the house where Avesta is kept with the other Templar in Devlamen's cult, you would call it, or his lineage of who worships his deity and everything. And he goes there, and they come to fetch Avesta, or come to speak to Avesta. And Avesta is obviously not doing well, and Devlamen has an argument with the Templar because they find out Avesta is actually a necromancer. And this kind of goes against Devlamen's beliefs, because his Templar group was a group that actually went and wiped out a whole bunch of necromancers in the city, because necromancers is dubbed to be very evil and very terrible and a horrible method of trying to do things in the world. No one really likes it. So yeah, he has this argument, but he has to come to terms with himself that now he's with this group. Avesta has helped them, and he has to get her to Gold's Keep because he doesn't want her to become an undead herself, even though she is a necromancer, because as an undead she'll be worse off. So Danielle manages to calm him down and manages to make them make the decision to make their way to Gold's Keep to sort out Avesta. After some time, they head back to the Adventurers Guild. Tamir, at some point during this whole thing, decides to go on a little adventure of his own to try and acquire some gems. The party does not know this though, and still does not know this to this very day. So any of the party that sees this, do not watch this, cut everything. This is, you did not hear what I just said, okay? No, I know, I can see you there. Anyway, so they head back to the party and they decide, okay, we need to make a plan to head off to Gold's Keep. So they wake up in the morning and they're trying to look around to find a place to get to Gold's Keep. And Darius has a full-on apology with Sasha of how he behaved so much like a royal spoiled brat, basically, and just gave a heartfelt apology to her, which was really sweet. And after that point, Sasha reveals that she is the daughter of the merchant who runs the store, and he is sending a shipment to Gold's Keep, which they can acquire transport with, which would be really awesome, because that means they can take a Vesta in a cart, which I'm sure he wouldn't mind borrowing because he doesn't have too much to transport. It's just goods for the king, and that would be really useful for them to acquire transport. So they head off to the merchant, and the merchant discusses how they're going to leave the following day. So they get back to preparing for the journey ahead. They have one more drink at the tavern, and they get to know each other a little bit better, talking back and forth about each other. you know, finding out more things about each other. Darius still tries to flirt with Danielle, even though Danielle wants nothing of it. And the next morning, they wake up, they get ready to head to the journey, and the merchant is distraught because some gems for the king are missing. Precisely 3 emeralds and a ruby, I think it was. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tamir, but it was 3 emeralds and a ruby. And Tamir manages to smartly distribute all the emeralds and rubies across the city. So the party splits up throughout the town to go help find them. Devlamin heads off to the market center along with Tamir to try find some of the rubies and emeralds. Tamir obviously finds one. And then Danyara and Danyara and Kurok head over to Yaga's house, who is a woman in the town who seems to know a lot about what happens in the town. So they head off to her, and Darius ends up staying to help pack. I think he heads off with, I can't exactly remember. Some of the details are going to be a bit fuzzy, but it's obviously minor details that aren't of major importance, so most of the important facts you'll get. But the important part is Kurok and Danyara ended up going to Yaga, who is a very old woman who stays in the house, a little bit of away from the town on her own. They end up going to her place, and she ends up being able to find the gems for her because they find out she is a sorceress, and she has a spell on her cats that allow her to see through her cat's eyes, which is really beautiful because even as an old woman, she gets to explore even though she doesn't really get to explore. It allows her to see the world through other things' eyes. So she manages to help them through where her cats have been. She obviously can't control her cats, her like millions of cats that she has. She can't control them, but she at least knows where they last saw the gem. So they end up finding a couple of the gems, getting back to the cart. As Kurok and Danyara leave, they have to roll will saves. Ooh, spooky. Every time the Dungeon Master tells you to roll something that you don't know about, you know something bad's gonna happen. Or maybe not bad, I don't know, we'll find out. But they get to the cart and they sit up and they begin to head off. No, JC, I cannot play ball with you right now. Go speak to your mom, okay? Sorry about that, that was my dog. So they head off and they go and they get onto the carts, they prepare for the journey, and they begin to travel towards Gold's Keep. It is, I think, about a 5 days travel, if I'm not mistaken. And they get on the carts, they get Avesta onto the cart, everything is ready, and they begin to head off. Danyara goes with the Devlamin obviously to fetch Avesta, who is a bit shaken and she's feeling a lot more weak. They begin the journey, and the journey leads eventually into a forest. As they're traveling through the forest, they begin to hear tapping on trees. They kind of sound like a Morse code spoken by other things. The only one in the party that can understand what's happening is Tamir, who also begins to tap on the cart in response to what they are saying, because he is obviously able to speak Thieves' Cant, which allows him to speak kind of things like Morse code and kind of understand different. Obviously, he's a rogue, you know. It's that devious kind of language. You all know about it. You're D&D fans, or look it up or whatever. Anyway, so they get ambushed by some drow, but this was prepared for already, because every time the trade cart goes through here, there is already a whole bunch of drows that ambush the trade cart, and they don't hurt anyone. All they do is steal food. So what they had done this time is they prepared a whole bag of food for them to take with them. Danyara, who is obviously a drow, attempts to hide her face among this whole thing because they don't want she doesn't want them seeing that there's another drow, because she finally managed to run away from them and now they're back and now she's trying to avoid them. Tamir was able to talk to them, being able to tell them what's going on in the Morse code without any of the party knowing that. I mean, the drow obviously thought they were gods, so Tamir kind of saved their life there, cause them not to fight. So the drow end up taking everyone back, and well, they end up, sorry, not everyone back. The drow end up taking the food and they leave after some time of talking with them. Kurok attempts to hide. He manages to roll an impressively good stealth check for someone who is not a stealthy character, who's very tall and very loud. And then it comes to nothing of it because obviously no fights happen, so he ends up getting back on the cart and they travel to a part that reaches the edge of the forest. And the edge of the forest overlooks a large black field of grass. The grass looks decayed, even though it is still there, it looks a bit withered. But it seems like it's been that way for a long time. If any of them had rolled an Arcana or Religion check, they would feel that there's really strong magic present, or presence of some sort of magic hovering in the area. It's dormant and is not in use, but it is still there. They arrive closer to evening, and as night begins to fall, they all camp there with the rider of the cart, obviously, and a couple of the workers, and they camp there, and at night time they begin to see spectres appear on the field. But it is almost like ghosts that reenact a battle in the past, and every now and then two ghosts would appear, one of a demon and one of a undead skeleton, and they would fight and kill each other, and then they would disappear, and then another one would reappear. And then coming from the further left side of the field, they would see a large hand coming out the ground with horns that come out the ground as well, and it looks like the appearance of something huge. And then you see a whole bunch of demon spirits rushing across the field, and from the other side you see, standing on the edge, a necromancer with a snake wrapped around his staff going all the way to the top, and his head peeking up at the top of the staff, and he's got a very dark cloak on, and they know this necromancer to be Kalia, as told by the old stories of Kalia, who managed to save the entire side of the country by summoning the undead, which wasn't really liked by a lot of the community, because obviously summoning the undead is evil, but he used it to protect the people from the evil demon. And suddenly, coming from his side, he slams the stick into the ground, and the entire grass begins to turn black. Any leaves that fall from the tree onto the grass patch also decompose and turn black, and it starts to edge across like a plague across the entire field, and pushes all the demons back, and it all disappears, and all you see is the moonlight behind Kalia as his spectre stands in the shadows in the distance on the right side of the field. And they witness this entire battle of history's past. It's scary to witness, but it is a beautiful sight. It's like watching a play before your eyes with the best CGI ever. And you hear the thing that this occurrence only happens usually during a full moon, which happens quite often in this world. The moon is not as calm, is not as fluid as it is in our world today. So what happens now is after some time they begin to hang out and drink and everything, and Danyara, the workers and everyone heads back to sleep, and Danyara heads to check if Avesta is okay. And Avesta is writhing in pain. And from the outside, Kurok, Timmy has gone to sleep, but Kurok and Darius, it looks like Danyara and Avesta are getting up to something from outside the tent, something a little less sanitary, and not like she's trying to help her. But from the inside, Avesta is possessed by some sort of spirit and is calling out to Danyara. She's screaming, "Help me," while the spirit is calling out how a demon will rise again, a demon will return to the land of Sanctum. And this obviously strikes fear in in Daniara's eyes, and coming from the outside, they're talking about how, oh, the women are roughhousing, and this is, woman on woman action, so to speak. But even so, Kurok decides to go to the tent, because Kurok is obviously very blunt, and by woman on woman action, Kurok is thinking, oh, they're fighting, and Darius is obviously thinking it was something a little more kinky. So Kurok decides, I'm going to go check if they're okay, and he goes and he opens the door, and with Daniara giving him a glare, saying, leave us! And he closed the tent. And he closes the tent back up, and then Kurok says they do not want to be disturbed. And obviously Darius is like, yep, they definitely don't. But obviously they still think that thing is happening. And Daniara manages to calm Avesta down as she calms down as well, and the spirit kind of festers away again. And she exits the tent after she's calm. By the way, the Vlamin has left ahead on a journey because he was called to the northern to Gold's Keep in a hurry because the Templars had something bigger they had to deal with. So at this point, the Vlamin has gone ahead of the party towards the city of Gold's Keep. He had to travel through the night. He got his rest when he arrived. But now, what happened is Daniara leaves the tent and and obviously Kurok and Darius are laughing at her because obviously of what happened, and they all begin to take their watches. But it is at this point where there's like a little bit of teasing going on, and obviously Darius is like trying to like kind of flirt with her a little bit, but tease her, and then they all begin to take their watches for the night. Tamir gets word of a note from the Vlamin saying he has to leave, and he accidentally he does something with the guard that forces him to owe him sleep because the guard woke him up for his shift, and then he writes on the back of the note how he owes him sleep, and then the guard was nice to him, so he kind of tore up the notes because the guard didn't owe him sleep anymore, not thinking that the letter written by the Vlamin was on the note, and then it completely destroyed any evidence of the Vlamin ever leaving. But on Daniara's watch, on the final watch of the evening, that session ends with Daniara being captured. The rest of them hear screaming, and they wake up to Daniara's voice being dragged out to the forest towards the left side of the field. Everyone rushes up. Darius is the first one to get up. He chases after, grabs all his equipment as best as he can, and he runs. Tamir runs straight after them, and so does Kurok. All end up streaming after her as she disappears down the forest, and she gets taken away. They're obviously a bit ahead because they know the pathing of whoever's capturing her. They end up going down into this cave, following trails of where Daniara had been taken. Back to Daniara's story, she ends up arriving at a large citadel, an underground city that is run by drow, and a whole bunch of drow live there. And she ends up being taken to a very dark room where she meets Xandar Grimm, who is the leader of the drow. And he is currently running the whole city. It was an abandoned dwarven citadel or castle or whatever you want to call it, and he decided to take it over and brought in refugees who came from the north. Now the drows in the north are said to be horrible people which kill and destroy and do all those terrible things and worship a whole bunch of terrible deities and everything like that, obviously the terrible kind of drow. But these drow are more the people that wanted to get away from that kind of life. If you've heard of the story of Drist in the D&D universe, it's that kind of idea of drows trying to have a good life and live for the better. This is what this city was all about, those who were trying to escape, coming to the south, but also they had to hide because there was a lot of animosity towards drow because of how they are so evil up north that they can't be good again, So Daniara meets this Xandar Grimm, who she realizes trained with her father. Now Xandar Grimm has a weapon, the scorpion whiptail. So he uses a whip like that with the scorpion tail as the weapon. So she ends up by his place. He explains a whole bunch of stuff to her about how he trained with her father, and he wanted to. He's inviting her into his home, and now going back to Darius, Kurok, and Tamir, who are chasing after her, they end up in the tunnel, and in the tunnel they end up staying in this in the open area, which have 3 tunnels, one going to the center, one going to the left, one going to the right, after being in this cave, and they begin to take their watches. Now, through Darius's watch, a traveler comes through there. I think it was Kurok's watch. Yes, it was Kurok. A traveler comes through talking about how he is just coming to bring his wares through the middle tunnel to the lizard folk. So he was traveling through the middle tunnel to get to the lizard folk, so that kind of gives a little bit of leeway to go there. But they do not know where Danielle had been dragged to. The tunnel to the left went further down into the Underdark. And as the last trip happens with Tamir, somehow they accidentally awaken a land shark, a boulet, which attempts to try and kill and eat all of them, but somehow manages to not to, and because of the die rolls, it ends up pushing them towards the tunnel to the left, which they end up going down into the Underdark, and eventually arrive to the city, the Underdark city that is covered in drow, basically. So they get there, and they get to the door, and they get held up by a whole bunch of drow, Tamir being the only one to outsmart them and outmaneuver them and steal one of their blades. With all due respect, they were brought in by Drax. No, they were brought in by Drax, who is one of the soldiers in the militia, and he brings them inside and heads back to his duties, and they see a whole civilization of drow inside, with little children, and even starting up their own stores and everything of drow just trying to live. And they end up going to the top of the drow fortress, which is where the throne room is. So there's a huge staircase that goes all the way to the top, and there's a huge wall around it. Kind of think, if you think like Helm's Deep from what's Lord of the Rings, or if you think of maybe Minas Tirith, those kind of places, that's kind of like how this fortress looks. So they end up going up this large staircase all the way up to where Xandar Grim is, and they enter the throne room, which is dark, completely dark. They can barely see. Unless they have dark vision, they can kind of see, but it's not a natural darkness. Xandar Grim greets them, but in a way that they can't see him, and he lets his whip that he can control with ease roll around their body, and warns them not to touch it, because obviously a scorpion whiptail, you don't want to get stung by that thing. So after some time of introducing them and welcoming them, they get pulled in to the floor below them opens up, sort of, and they end up in a room, and each of them have a test, and in each of them a sword appears, a weapon appears that has lightning in the weapon. In Kurok's story, Danyara and his ancestors are against each other, and Kurok decides to let them fight each other. In Tamir's story, Tamir is blamed for stealing, and he tries to get out of it, but he has to choose it's basically a thing of choice of whether they would give their lives to protect Danyara. It's basically a test of would they be worthy of the Drow's safekeeping? Are they worthy to survive, to let live, or are they a danger to the Drow society? Because if they're going to give the secret of the Drow away, then they are not trustworthy and they will be killed on the spot. Darius has to stand between his father, who wants to kill Danyara, and obviously Danyara, who he begins to realize he's starting to have feelings for, which is why he ran after her first. So they begin to have this, he picks up the blade. He, out of all of them, is the only one that picks up the blade and uses it. At the end of it, he is bestowed the blade. It is a samurai blade with dragons and scales on it, and it is a blue blade, and it has the power of lightning. And it is found out that it is created by Daniara's father, Immeril, who is obviously known in this campaign because Xandar Grimm trained with him. So now they find out about this, and they don't know the blade's purpose, and they don't know why the blade was made by Immeril, but the only thing Daniara knows is that the blade, and Xandar knows, is that the blade was not meant for the heir to the blade, but it is meant for someone else. It is her blade, but she cannot wield it, which is really exciting, because then, ooh, it's such a mystery of what this blade does. So then, after some time, while they're discussing this thing and everyone appears back in the room after their test and they all pass their tests, we have Rollo, who bursts into the room. Now Rollo has been staying among the drow for a really long time. He was in the forest alone, and he ended up on a hunting trip meeting with some of the drow huntsmen, and he met, geez, where's my English going? He met Drax, and him and Drax ended up trusting him for a moment, because obviously he's been in the forest. Who the hell is he going to tell about a whole drow fortress that is under the ground? And he ends up going back to the city with Drax, and they end up staying there for a long time. So Rollo basically stayed there for a really long time and earned the kinship of all the drow. And he bursts into the room talking about how there is an entire army of Myconids heading towards the city as they speak. Thousands and thousands of Myconids ready to chew apart the city. And this is where it begins the first great war in D&D Sanctum. So all the characters begin to prepare. They should be there in a couple of days, in a day or two. So they begin to prepare everything for this war. There is 2 days left, as far as I remember, and they decide to rest after this whole thing that happens. They get their own quarters. They have a meal that evening where Xandar Grimm introduces everyone to each other, and he welcomes the newly found royalty, so to speak, which obviously Daniara hated royalty, because Darius is royalty, and Darius is the one that kept flirting with her, and now Darius is teasing Daniara because she's kind of royalty too, because her dad kind of like founded the city of the drow and helped Xandar Grimm, so now there's like this whole thing going on. So it's kind of like this back and forth kind of banter, so that's quite funny. And somehow Rollo is the only one that can get to Kurok about leaving the party afterwards without drinking too much. They all enjoy the festivities, and they leave the party heading back to their quarters, and in the morning they awaken to an epic training session in the training grounds where they all begin to show their stuff. I wish you guys could have heard that session, because I understand how, this is how I see it. When fighting a estranged creature that you have never seen before, the fight can look a bit clumsy because both of you don't know what each of you are expecting. But when you are fighting in the training grounds, you will know that you can own this thing because you have been here before. You can show off the most badassery of your skills that you have possible. And the way it tested all of them was so amazing and so cool, and they even brawled against each other. So Kurok and Darius had a fist fight brawl, which ended in a draw because someone stopped it, and they were very disappointed by that. Tamir, Rollo and Daniara ended up fighting each other, now Rollo being a ranger, and Daniara, who casts her spells like a ranger because they had the same trainer. Which they do not know. They think they had the same trainer, but when they're fighting against each other, their fighting styles looked almost identical. And it was just amazing to watch. And then we had Tamir, who was challenged by Xandar with his scorpion whiptail. This was the first display of Tamir's magical ability with his arcane trickster. So this is really, really exciting for Tamir. No one else noticed this though, because a lot of the magic he does is kind of illusion magic, so it was pretty exciting to see. He managed to kick up a bit of like a cloud of dust that he couldn't see anything, but Xandar was obviously faking it and managed to defeat Tamir in the last moments. After all of that, they ended up having trying to remember what happened for the rest of the session. I think, as far as I know, they ended up kind of getting back together, discussing everything that happened. They discussed a lot of Rolo's past with the whole what's happened and how he's gotten to where he is, and they begin to prepare for the final day. They go out and prepare to dig up the traps for the Myconids, and they prepare to say their goodbyes for the next day, just in case they don't see each other again, because this is a great war that is about to happen. They all, the next morning, get up and they get ready to leave. They say their goodbye to Xandar, just in case, and Drax comes and leads them to the back of... So what happens is, where they entered the city from, the Myconids are coming from the opposite side. So they go through the back of the city towards a cave in the side where there's said to be a whole bunch of creatures. So, continuing from where we left off, the characters, the entire party, is after all the stuff they did in the Drow City, one thing they also found out in the Drow City, I'm trying to remember if it was before or after. Yes, before the fight, before I forget, before they left. That night, the night before that they had to go and sort everything out, they went into one of the taverns. And they went for a last night's drink before the next day for the fight. And Danielle finds something out. If you remember, when they walked into Yaga's house, they had to roll a wisdom save. They now find out that Yaga knows exactly where they are, because Yaga has cast a spell on Kurok and on Danyara that allows her to see where they go. And Danyara finally manages to make a connection with Yaga and manages to communicate with her. And they found out the story of this old woman, and they panicked because this is a secret Drow fortress. They can't be telling anyone about this, and it's scary because now this like what will happen if now Xandar believes that they've betrayed their trust, and now it's like, oh no, we've seen too much, and now all these things have happened, and now anyone could invade the Drow city. But they Danyara demands that the spell be dropped immediately, and they see a tear in the old woman's eye, and she shows in a vision her story of how she used to be an adventurer just like them, and then she took an arrow to the knee. No, I'm just kidding. No. How she used to be an adventurer just like them, and after some time of her getting too old, she couldn't adventure anymore. And she longs to see the world with her own eyes again. And what better way to do it than to see the journey of Danyara and Kurok and Rolo and Darius and Tamir and Devlamin, the entire party, all together. Well, obviously Devlamin's not in the Drow Fortress, he is there at the keep, at Gold's Keep. But she just gets that moment of, it's a realization of their adventure could end at any time, and one day they're going to be old and their adventure will just be a memory, and it is a moment for them to appreciate what they have now. But anyway, continuing forward, they move forward to the next day where they have to go to this cave, because what they plan to do is they plan to go to the back cave, which actually has a whole bunch of deadly creatures in, and their plan is to call the creatures in to try and get them to the city. So they go there and they wait for the Myconids to arrive. They almost encounter a basilisk, but thankfully they just manage to get away. Some of their body parts get turned to stone. Rolo ends up breaking a leg, and they end up going behind a wall, which is a secret passageway, and all the screeching animals stream past and go and try fight the Myconids. After some time of them moving out, they manage to walk their way deeper into the cave around, and they come out the backside where they first came across this land shark. The land shark, thankfully, is not there at the moment because it went down along with all the other creatures to try to fight the Myconids, and they went back. So it did a full circle, basically coming from the right side. If you remember, there were 3 tunnels to the cave, one to the left, the middle one going to the Seafreeze Bayou, which is where the lizard folk are, and the right tunnel coming from deeper within the cave. So they end up coming out the right tunnel, which makes a full circle back to the Drow encampment, where they go to help with the fight. Rolo is left in the back because obviously he's already injured, he has a broken leg, but they end up fighting these Myconids, and a whole bunch of them start being encompassed in the wall. The Myconids manage to chew right through the fortress wall, which is scary. These things will eat through anything except salt. They hate salt and they hate fire. After a long fight with them, and the fight doesn't seem like it's looking good for the Drow side, they hear a rumbling coming from deep within the cave, and in the distance they see a white spark of light. The only ones that were managed to resist its blast were Darius and Tamir, and as they open their eyes before they are knocked out, they see a large dragon in the distance, a blue dragon in the distance, who whispers to, or who shouts across the entire cave, "You must not disturb my slumber," as he wipes out the entire Myconid army, and a couple of Drow, but not too many, and knocks almost everyone out. The next few days, they all begin to wake up in hospitals, especially for Rolo because he was the most injured. All of them didn't take too much damage. They all managed to survive because it wasn't as they managed to just survive by the skin of their teeth. But Rolo was the one who got injured the most, so he was the last to clamber out of bed. And as he wakes up, Xandar, the entire party's around him making sure he's okay. And as he wakes up, Xandar walks up to him and thanks him for all his service that he has done for the Drow, but says how he must find his own path, and he must leave the Drow fortress and go find his own way. And it is a really emotional moment for Rolo, because the only people he has ever made friends with for so long, and now he has to leave, not knowing if he'll see them again or not. And Xandar gives Rolo a hug and bids him farewell. And he says to him, "Unfortunately, I don't think I will be the most painful goodbye." And Rolo turns around, and behind him in the doorway, with tears in his eyes, is his best friend, Drax, who was the one who found him. And they say goodbye, and they leave the Drow encampment, continuing to the city of Goldkeep to try to save Avesta, and to find out what else they need to find there. And to finally see Mommy and Daddy Dragon, of course, as well, which the whole party has been teasing Darius about. There's a couple of other things, because Darius is finally going back home. There were a couple of other situations where Tamir was in a tree and he fell and landed on Danielle, and then, Tamir is like the jokester of the group and always gets everyone into shit because of his clumsiness. But the journey eventually leads them towards the rest of the way towards Gold's Keep, and their journey ends, at the top of the hill, which continues on to the next session, which is actually recorded for you guys. So I just want to thank you all, and for those of you who took the time to listen to how the campaign has come this far. And I really hope you enjoy the journey that everyone takes you on, and I really hope that you guys enjoy the world that I spent so long creating. And I want to thank you for in advance for all of you guys just enjoying it with us. We will have a couple more videos like this soon, I'm sure. I hope you enjoy the sessions. Feel free to like and comment in all the sessions that there are. Give us your opinion, because we're looking forward to having this go on for a really long time and inviting more people. And I hope you really enjoy all the sessions and everything that we put so much work into doing. And thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I look forward to seeing you guys pretty soon in another video we record. And feel free to give us suggestions as well. I mean, like I said, we encourage fan art, we encourage fanfic, we want all of that. If you think you have a cool picture of what you think Danielle looks like, go for it. I mean, we're going to post similar things of what our characters possibly look like and bios and stuff. So we'll try starting to get, like, if this gets really popular, we'll probably start getting a Facebook page up and everything. So we'll do the best we can to give you as much information as you would like to know. So we encourage you guys to give us suggestions on what you would like to see from us. So thank you so much, guys, for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the rest of the campaign in the world of Sanctum.
What's the temperature?
I don't know, okay? Fuck.
I've got fur, it matters! I could be having a stroke at this point!
It's a sunny day! 26 degrees!
Yeah, that's like 5,000 degrees
Fahrenheit
for me.
or
Confusing.
Celsius?
Fahrenheit!
Celsius.
So
Celsius.
okay, I was about to say that's fucking below freezing.
Yeah, I know. Just